Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us back on The Experience. And today we have Courtney Starkey back, hypnotherapist extraordinaire. And if you want to know more about what Courtney is doing, you're going to have to watch the first part of this because we're going to get right back into it. But needless to say, she is a very, very highly skilled hypnotherapist with training with Brian Weiss, Dolores Cannon's method of QHHT, and Life Between Lives hypnotherapy through the Newton Institute. So welcome back, Courtney.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's so good having you. There's so many things that I want to cover today, and you know, people were really excited about what you had to share, so we're going to just dive in. So one of the things that we had started to talk about and I want to lead us back into is the conversation about what kinds of themes you're starting to notice in your practice as a hypnotherapist. So go ahead, share that.
And is it fine with you if I also bounce some questions back to you as far as if you're noticing things that are similar?
Sure, I'd love to.
Because I love learning, so
yes.
I'm just wondering if you're experiencing the same thing. So I actually, and I know we'll talk more about this, I'm actually writing an article right now for the Newton Institute, and it has to do with animals being in our soul groups and the different types of living beings that we incarnate into. And I think, even though I'm extraordinarily busy, I think it's so important to start to get that information out there because it is a new theme that is coming up. I feel like we are evolving so rapidly in our spirituality that we're ready to learn more. So I would say probably that's the biggest umbrella as far as the themes that are showing up, is that we are ready to know so much more than we were even a few years ago.
I totally agree.
Right. So part of that is that we have this tendency to think in a very hierarchical nature where it's like, okay, humans here, I'll try to fit
animals down here.
Yeah. Humans here, spirit realm, spirit guides here, animals down here.
And never the tween shall meet.
Right. And it's really just this beautiful mix. I mean, some of our pets, we find out in sessions, are actually spirit guides that have come in for a few years, because every now and then our only source of love might be that pet to get us through that time. So if you think of the powerful impact that that animal has, as if humans are animals, we're animals.
Yeah, we are.
There really should be no distinction. But yeah, there is this wonderful information flowing in now where I think that we are opening our eyes to that there really isn't that hierarchy, that we're all living beings. We all have very special purposes. If you want to pop into a lifetime as a rock, then that's the thing that you want to experience.
Right.
Maybe you just need to rest.
Yeah, you know, I agree with you totally, and I think it's an interesting thing to bring this point up, because I think a lot of people, there's conflicting information out there. I think if you go to a conversation earlier decades, not even that many years ago, up until recent, you still have people who really believe this, that you will not incarnate into a sentient human, and then go into an animal incarnation. Like,
right.
That there's that hierarchy. And so
right.
I agree. I agree that it's the perception is changing, and so that's what's so trippy and interesting about consciousness and the evolution of consciousness. It becomes, in a way, unimportant what people thought in the past, because when they're coming through in sessions, right, like it's undeniable. This is their truth, and it becomes part of the collective truth. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And as far as what's coming in through the sessions, there were three main things. I'm curious to see if you noticed this as well, because we trained at the same time through TNI, and of course we have to do those practice sessions. And as I was doing the practice sessions, a lot of the people that I was practicing with hadn't read Newton's books, because they were doing me a favor, as opposed to being like, oh my gosh, I love these books so much, can I please do this type of session? So
yeah, Courtney did all of her stuff in like 2 days.
It was pretty insane. It was 100% go. Yeah. So that was interesting too, where it was all flooding in a very short period of time. And it was really amazing because they didn't have this exposure to Newton's work. So whenever they were connecting to something that validated the work, that was extremely profound. And then when they were going into areas that actually conflicted with some of the wisdom in his work, but validated each other's wisdom, and they don't know each other and they're not conversing with each other about what's coming into the sessions. So I know they're not feeding off of each other, but very consistently, there were three things that I noticed. The first was that animals definitely are in our soul groups, and that we definitely incarnate as we wish. I think it's so funny when people place rules on the universe or our souls, and it's like, if I want to be a rock, if I want to be a dinosaur, if I want to be a speck of dust on a star, like that's what I want to do. And there are no limitations.
Free will, baby.
Yes, there are no limitations.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things that came in. And I love animals a lot. So anytime I was reading in his books where the person would say, oh no, we definitely don't have animals in our soul groups. They're separate. You can visit if you want, but they're not part of it. I just always felt really like off about those statements. It didn't feel accurate. And I'm a little bit of a rebellious soul, indigo child. And so I felt okay with being like, yeah, I don't think that's right.
Well, maybe it's a feathering in. I do feel like as the consciousness of humanity evolves, and as you mentioned earlier, it's like we're able to take more on board because our consciousness is expanding to include ideas that aren't so rigid. Yeah, I've had clients, well, one in particular who went to counsel, and her entire counsel were animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I love how Luna is in the background now, where she's like, "Oh yeah,
here. Yeah, this is all my scene here."
She's so cute,
little queen.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
and
she's like,
so about the hierarchy. It's just like, well, who is taking good care of whom?
And I've also really resonated with the idea that animals are here as a balancing element because their energy is so much more. Sorry, the jiggle, Luna just jumped on the table.
Sorry.
That their energy is here to help harmonize us, because the human experience is so fraught. Like there's so much emotional highs and lows, and animals have an easier time maintaining that pure grace energy.
Yeah. They're doing what we keep striving to do. They're in the present moment. They let things go. They are the masters of forgiveness. So
they're unconditionally loving.
Yes, exactly. My husband and I were chatting with a friend the other day, and my friend was saying, oh my gosh, there's this amazing position with this one brewery, and the person's position is director of fun. And so my husband was joking a few minutes later that it's like dogs come to earth because they are the directors of fun.
Oh, it's so true.
Come play with me. Take me for a walk. Is that a ball? Let's play catch.
I feel like it's just appropriate to share this. I don't know if you're familiar with the Channeling Eric group at all. The Channeling Eric group is Elisa Medhus is a physician whose son tragically killed himself probably about 10 years ago now, and he's come forward through psychic mediums and communicates with her, and that's their whole show. And so at one point in the show, they brought forward Bruce Lee, the famous movie star who I've always had a crush on because he's such a badass. And he died so suddenly. And he came through talking about how the reason he chose his life as Bruce Lee is because he had been in a life as a circus animal. I think it was a horse or some large animal that was in a circus, and he could not control any of the circumstances of his life. And he chose to come into his life as Bruce Lee because he wanted to lead a life where he had complete control over his physical body, over the circumstances of his life. And then when he had that experience, he was done. And I thought, regardless of validation, because to me, when you do this work, as you probably know, there will be moments where there's like such profound validation that it's mind-blowing. But then there's other times where it all sort of feathers in, like maybe, the timeline and time in itself is so malleable that for me anyway, it stops being important. Yeah. And it's more about the evolution and the freedom or the growth that occurs within the human being, and within me, or, whoever we're talking about here, and less about the specific empirical details,
right. Yes, absolutely. Well, and also, and as far as collecting data and understanding what's really happening, I mean, that story just gave me so many goosebumps. Like the goosebumps are my
data your truthometer.
The blanket, I got so many goosebumps happening right now.
Yay.
And if you think about it too, as far as the way that humans are opening up their hearts and their minds, just talking about circuses in general, I know that they're not completely gone, but they are on their way out. People are really understanding that those are living beings that have feelings and emotions, and they value their freedom as well. And a handful of peanuts, if you will, like it's not getting it done as far as the energy that they're putting out versus what they're receiving back. So that's incredible that he thought, all right, time to experience the polar opposites, and I'm gonna have total control. And it was interesting too that he did have what seemed like a brief lifetime, but that he did it, and he did it well, and he was like, I'm good.
He nailed it. I mean, he had an amazing family life from start to finish, and he controlled the circumstances of his death from what he communicated. I encourage you all to check out that channeling Eric. But he also said that in the conclusion of his life in the circus, again, I'm talking about Bruce Lee, his owner ended his life. Like he was dying, but he wasn't able to even find his own pathway through that life and beyond. So his owner decided when he was going to end his life. And so that was another reason why Bruce Lee felt like he had to die the way that he did, because it was under his own control. And that was just an experience that he really wanted to have. And I commend people for that. I think, we could go off on a whole nother tangent, but
Part 3.
Suffice it to say, there's a lot we could go into, and maybe that's for another time. But yeah, tell me what else you're noticing.
Okay, so there is that whole animal element, and in the part 1, I'll plug the part 1 interview as well, where I talked about that I actually have a concurrent lifetime right now as an orangutan. So, which
there it is again.
A couple years ago, I've been like, oh my God, should I say that out loud? And now I'm just like, it's time. Like
rock your inner orangutan, baby.
Yes. If only I had that same upper body strength.
I know, like upper arms, like thighs.
Right. I could reach everything. So. But yeah, so it's one of those things where people are opening up more. I feel more comfortable talking about it. Plus, I feel like going back to our training and those initial sessions when we were getting certified, and I felt like I had these secrets that I needed to keep for a little bit. And I'm just like, no more secrets. Like, we need to talk about this stuff, because I didn't want to rock the boat. Like, all of this stuff seems so concrete. It's been so validated. But we should also mention that we're at the 50th anniversary of the first LBL session. And if you think about what's transpired in the last 50 years, like, things have changed. We're ready for way more. If I even think about, and we'll get into this in a bit, if I even think about what has been shifting in the sessions just over the last half year, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it is just amazing, like the best bananas ever. It's bananas what's coming in these sessions, and that's just been in the last handful of months. So the course of 50 years, some things are going to shift and evolve. And so when I was first getting all that information, and like I said, the clients didn't know each other, but they were validating each other's experiences. then I felt a little bit nervous to talk about it.
Share with us a little bit.
Sure. So the animal part is, I would say, probably the biggest, but then also the other two areas that I notice consistently, one is that our soul group members aren't necessarily as concrete as we thought, and our soul colors aren't necessarily as concrete as we thought.
Yeah, so, I totally agree with
right.
That.
So there is this clean, basically rainbow, start with white, then go into the red and go down the rainbow until you start to get into the purples. And that was supposed to show your soul's evolution. And I think that there probably is something to that, but I don't think that we always show up in every situation in one certain color where it's like, well, now I'm a purple, and so I'm just going to be purple for forever.
Yeah. And I'm highly advanced, and
right.
Now I know that my station in life is secure, and I'm a badass.
Yeah, I'm ready for what's next after purple. So, but and then what was interesting in the book where the TNI hypnotherapist, they shared different stories. Is it Memories
of the Afterlife?
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the therapists talked about, and this is what actually started to give me more courage about talking about the differences that I noticed. So one of those stories talked about that the soul would cloak themselves in a different color because that soul is a teacher, and if the soul were to reveal the true color, that there would be a bit of an intimidation that the students would feel. So they would cloak themselves in a different color so that the students could just learn rather than feeling that distance between where they are versus where the teacher is. So it was a very purposeful change. Yeah. So there's that piece. And then I also noticed, because again, these people were doing me a favor, so I knew them very well. So my husband was one of the people I practiced on. My best friend was one of the people I practiced on. A friend who is just so near and dear to my heart, I practiced on him as well. And so all of these people were seeing me in their soul group. Not everyone that I practiced on saw me, but those three did. They all saw me in their soul group, but they are not in each other's. And interestingly enough, I've never been shown my soul group.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. I'm blocked to a large degree. And that happens a lot with my clients as well, where they only get like a couple of them and the rest are like shrouded or blurred out or.
Yeah. So I think that there is intentionally a bit of mystery so that, again, there are no rules. And if we start to think that we know exactly how things are, and then someone brings up conflicting information, then we're not as open to the information that they're bringing to the table. So I feel like it's very possible that and actually another client who was curious about this, we did get into this information with his session, and we confirmed what we were suspecting, which is that there are the original soul groups, the ones that you're born with, but then eventually it's time to go play with other souls and have projects with other souls. And so a lot of those soul groups are also they're long term, but they're also temporary, where they've got
a specialization groups.
Yes. Yeah. And so it will make sense that you find yourself with a soul group. It's your temporary soul group. But when I say temporary, of course, it's a big project and you're together for a long time.
When you're an eternal being, temporary could be a very, very lengthy period of time.
Right. And so they would show up as different colors, which again, according to the books, it's not in line with what we've been reading. So you've got one that's bronze. Okay. And that was the other thing. Different colors than what tends to be listed. Bronze, gray, and not like a dull gray, but just like that's how they want to vibe.
Yeah.
They vibe. And then a purple, and then a yellow. And I'm listening to all this. I'm like, what is happening? But then I realized, okay, this is very consistent here. Let's just figure it out. And that's
you have to be nimble as a hypnotherapist, because it's gonna challenge not only what you've been taught, but it's also going to challenge your perception of reality. And you have to stay with them. You can't be like, no, check again. I mean, you can, but if they're like adamant that this is happening, you have to take that on board in a way that's therapeutic and not project your own stuff.
Right. And I've learned just to not even have any of my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go with
It's a
it.
really good tool for that. It's a really, to have a detachment. Um, and that's a question I'm curious about. I mean, I don't want to totally derail this, but I am curious from like a personal point of view. Do you feel like your work with consciousness allows you to be more flexible with structures of reality?
This question makes me so happy. Like it was like internal goosebumps that I just got where it went like in and buzzed a little bit. Yeah. And I would say that the beginnings of that, I give so much credit to my time as a hypnosis client.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, that's been the best training for all of this because you're in there.
Yeah.
Like your firsthand experience is in there. And so beginning with that period, but then also moving into as the hypnotherapist, being exposed to not only what I'm seeing firsthand, but what is also flowing in from these other people. Yeah, everything's bendable.
Yeah.
This is okay. Here we go. Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. I bend time pretty easily at this point. I'm still getting better at it, but I've been bending and playing with a lot of things, and
In
it's
your
really
day to
fun.
day, in your day
What's
to
that?
day, right? In your day to day. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool. Okay, wait. I just want to explain to people what we're talking about right now because this, I think, is a very expansive conversation. And so, what Courtney is talking about is through her work as a hypnotherapist and as a hypnotherapy client,
Yeah.
she has started to understand her greater abilities. And so, she's talking specifically now about time and the malleability of time, and I think this is a really important topic for the future, and we're going to be talking about this later on too, like where hypnosis is going, where the future of hypnosis is. But I just want to bring you all up to speed so that you're not completely lost, because she and I could probably just go off into the stratosphere and forget you guys. No, but we want you to come with us on our little
Yes,
exciting
it's an amazing adventure. There should be more of us there.
yeah. So go ahead, time bending.
Okay, so it started off very easily, and I would invite anyone who hears a concept and they're curious about it, they're intrigued by it, but they're not totally sure what to do. As with anything, just start small and easy. As with anything, ask your team for help. They will create situations to bring in real world experiences so that we start to understand more and more about our capabilities and what's truly possible. And basically, long story short, it's all possible. So
So like set an intention.
yeah, absolutely. Set an intention, and I would go with an intention that feels doable rather than doing something that's so far out there that the universe would be like, well, we don't want to break your brain. Why don't we build up
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do all of this?
Like you don't go to the gym and start lifting 100-pound, 100-pound weights. You work your way up. I don't know if I'll ever get to 100-pound.
And well, I fully believe, because again, anything is possible, that we could, if we just worked our way up, that we could do anything. And then also when it got to the point where the physical body couldn't handle it, that's when you ask spirit to lift it for you. I mean, you hear about.
That's when you ask Bruce Lee to come on in.
Thank
He's
you.
totally,
Yeah.
come on down, Bruce. He
Right.
comes in my head when I'm training for running. He's just like, okay, now slow down and start breathing deeper. Okay, before you get up the hill.
Yeah, exactly. All of our friends are willing to help. We can ask for anything. And if you think about stories that we're all familiar with, like a mom who can lift a car suddenly because her child is trapped, like those things they've
That
happened.
really happens. Yeah, that's an
Right.
experience that people have had. So give a little snapshot of what you would do if there was something that you wanted to explore.
Yeah.
Explain for our peeps what that might look like in your experience.
Sure. And I'll take you through that time example because this has been so perfect. And it's been fun for me to be wowed and surprised as the journey has gone along. And I'm actually going to share a really kind of a personal statement to also show just as far as emotional growth the way that things have been changing for me over the last few years. And I only started as a hypnosis client 5 years ago.
Wow.
Like, this is a very short period of time that we're talking about. But yeah, so this was back in before, I know, right? Before I began my hypnosis journey. And the hypnosis journey for me has been a journey of really beginning to love myself, love those around me, love the universe, trust everything. So, and we know the strongest, most powerful emotion and energy that is out there is love. So this is really powerful, very profound. And I say all of this because shortly before the hypnosis journey began, I had a friend who was, this was when I lived in Hawaii, in Kailua. Oh, going back there in a week and a half. So I've got my Moki's mug here. Yes, I'll be back home in a week and a half. But yeah, so my friend, she's getting ready to pick me up. I used to be chronically late. Don't need that anymore because we can bend time.
There's no need to worry about it. Yeah,
exactly. So used to be chronically late. And because I was chronically late, I was very hyper aware of how long it would take me to get ready. So what I mean by that is, oh dear, what time is it? I better hop in the shower, wash the hair, shave the legs, do the whole thing, get dressed. And so I knew that it took me 35 minutes to get ready. Mm-hmm. And it's funny too, if you think about it, when I was more obsessed about how long things would take, I was also chronically late.
Yeah.
That's not coincidence.
That is interesting. No. Right. I think people who are, I do find that there are people who are specifically time, what's the word? I don't want to be negative about it, but just that struggle with time, struggle with their perception of time in a way that's limiting. That's what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Perfectly said. And so I knew it was going to take me 35 minutes to get ready based on a lot of previous history. Now, my friend Stephanie, she's like an angel on this earth. She is always on time, like always on time. And so what I said to the universe, now this is a big part of my growth. I actually said to the universe, it's hard for me to even say these sentences out loud anymore because they're so counter to how I feel. But I said, I understand that I deserve the shame and embarrassment of being late. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. But Stephanie does not deserve to have to wait for me. Can you please somehow help me get ready in 19 minutes? So we've got to shrink 35 down to 19. Like, there's no getting that. Like, I think if I had 32 minutes.
And it's not like you're scrubbing faster. You just you just created the time unit that you needed to have it either condensed within or expanded within. It's like an accordion.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like if I had had 32 minutes to work within, that I would have thought, okay, Courtney, the human, can handle this. I'll just get it done faster. But because we were talking about such a jump from 35 to 19, I was like, it's going to take a miracle.
Right.
Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to
You just give up. You give it up to the Lord.
Yes. Yes. And so, and I think also that time of showering, washing the hair, shaving the legs, all of that was such a perfect opportunity for them to play with me in this regard, because I didn't have a clock that I could obsessively look at over and over again and see how I was doing. Like, they removed me from access to telling time.
You can't look at the clock when you're morphing time. You cannot do it. That's right. That's what you're saying. Right. You can't, absolutely. That's what screws it up.
If you're going to let it go, you got to let it go.
Don't even look.
Yeah. And at that time, like, I had no clue about any of this. It's like, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, that's such a perfect opportunity, because I couldn't double check. And so when I get out of the shower, and like the last little stage only takes a couple of minutes, where I'm like, throw on the tank top and the shorts and the flip flops and just get out the door. That portion doesn't take much at all. Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, is the hair good? Yeah, whatever. Like, there is no, is the hair good? You just like go out. The wind's gonna blow it anyway, so just get out. And I got out of the shower, and I was just like, holy crap, that worked. I can't believe that worked. And so I've been playing with it in bigger, how should I say this, more expansion of understanding since then. Yeah, and it's really fun how they'll play with time and they'll make these things shift in such an easy way. I've got a couple more fun examples. One is I have another friend who's never late. He and I were meeting for tea. I actually would have been on time, but I don't know if it was an accident or construction or something like that, but it should have only taken about 10 minutes to get to the cafe. But then suddenly I'm sitting in this very long line of traffic. That's when I checked Google and Maps and I was like, oh no, like this is going on for a long time. So I made a wish to the universe. I was like, I don't know how you're going to do it unless you're going to show me how to teleport, but I really don't want Kevin to have to wait for me. Within a couple of seconds, he texted me and he was like, I am so sorry. I'm going to be 8 minutes late. And I just wrote to him, I was like, yeah, we have the same ETA. So
it's all good.
So there's that. And then my last example, which I think was so clever by them, is my husband and I love national parks. And there is this national park that's just north, or well, it's part of Michigan, and it's called Isle Royale. And we were embarking from Minnesota. The national park is technically in Michigan. We knew that the ferry, because you got to go over this big body of water. I don't remember which lake, one of the big ones.
Probably Lake Michigan.
Probably. I
don't know.
It was big.
So that's there.
Bumpy.
A big body of water called Lake Michigan.
Right. Yeah. It was one of those. It was one of the greats.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's a great lake.
Yeah, and so I almost never get seasick or motion sickness, but this was just so choppy that they even told us when we were embarking, they were like, guys, it's going to be rough, and if you just don't even want to go, like, refunds for everybody. You do not have to go. And my husband and I are going to all of the national parks. We actually finished all the national parks this August. Yay, in Alaska.
You. That's a goal of ours too, to take our kids.
Such a good goal. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Highly recommend it to everyone, actually, because this planet, oh my gosh, this planet is so beautiful. So we know that's going to take about 2.5 hours. It's really choppy. I'm starting to feel pretty nauseous, and I know my gang, and so I say to them, guys, I do not know how you're going to do this, but this trip needs to feel really short somehow. And I checked my phone, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes later, because I knew how much time had passed. I knew how much time we were supposed to have left in the journey. I checked my phone about 5 minutes later, kind of out of curiosity, where I was like, what are they going to do? It jumped an hour.
Wow.
So that, of course they had me do that prayer like right before it was going to jump an hour. Here's the real world explanation for that. Minnesota and Michigan are in different time zones.
Oh.
And so we had been reading, okay, this is when you leave, this is when you land. We had been reading that as 2.5 hours, but it was local times. So that jump. And then what was also great was right after I checked the phone, saw the jump, and was like, oh my God, you guys are hilarious. We started to get closer to the island, and because we were nearer to land, the water started to calm down a bit.
Good. Oh.
So it also felt better because
it all came together. And that's the beautiful thing about all of that stuff. It's like when you just allow your intentions to be that, and you don't overthink it, it can all come together in a way that you can't possibly anticipate. It'll be better. Your intention is just the bar that they have to reach. The more you allow, the better they can even surpass.
Exactly. Manifesting. And as far as bending everything and it all being malleable, manifesting, I am so into that. That's so much fun. And I find that
time is a manifestation.
Right. Yes. Again, part 3. We could talk about this for ages. Okay, we'll get it all done in the right amount of time today. But yeah, as far as manifesting, what I find in tying it back so beautifully, oh my gosh, so beautifully into hypnosis is when we let go and we allow, and we don't try to control or decide what's going to happen. When we're in hypnosis, we're in that beautifully open and connected state. So we start to have all of this information about what is possible. It starts to flow in. And the beautiful part, one of the many beautiful parts of hypnosis, is the way that you really feel that. You really believe it. I mean, you experience it to your core.
Yeah.
And so it fundamentally changes your belief system.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
and then you start to receive and you believe it. You're like, okay, I don't know how that's going to happen, but they showed me what it's going to be like, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. And it's like, I don't know how they're going to do it, but they showed it to me and I believe it. And then you start to allow and receive what they've given you, a snapshot of the future, instead of being like, how am I going to get this done?
Right. You have that sentient knowing, I had that when I was in training, just for my initial hypnotherapy training with Bryn Blankenship. My father came through, and my father died in 2003 of cancer, and it was devastating, of course. And he literally came into my body and downloaded his soul plan, just the part that pertained to me. But he's like, basically, I took one for the team. He died at 60 years old. And so the awareness that he didn't want to go, but it was part of what he agreed to, and the experience of having a father go through cancer and all of the stuff that went with it, and supporting him on his journey as he passed, was such a huge part of my experience too. And I just got it. Like I'm in the experience, like weeping, like, I mean, sometimes, like, I've had people go into convulsions and stuff with downloads, haven't you? Where you're just like, okay, here we go, holding the space here. I know, like, you just have to trust that it's okay.
During those times, the word trust is used often.
Like, okay. But it's always good hypnotherapists out there that are new, like, get emergency contact information just in case. No CPR, it never hurts. But I've never had to use it. But I just let people know. But yet I digress. But yes, that is the knowing that comes through in these profound experiences. And I think these are bits of information that we can't really know unless we're in the spirit realm or we're having an NDE. And so that's what's so cool about hypnotherapy, is it opens you up to the realm of knowing that we in our day-to-day are just starting to tap into. It's that blending now, that thinning of the veil.
Yes, and your intuition, because of hypnosis, your intuition becomes so strong on an everyday level. Like we were talking about, that you can lift 100 pounds. So if you think of the intuition, where before you were like, 5 pounds, no problem. And then you do hypnosis and you're like, 25 pounds, no problem. And it's just like, it comes in and you understand the way that it feels when you're in that receiving mode. And you also, because of all of the proof that they drop in your lab here and there, you start to trust and trust and trust, and it just gets bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And then more is possible.
It's so true. I totally agree. Do you feel like that affects the way, because I don't know. I'm being told to sort of bring this up, but I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it. So, like, the political realm and like science and evidence-based such and such, I feel like I've gotten to the point where I don't need that, because I just trust my inner guidance so much. And I feel like I have dear, dear friends and even family members that are like, where's your evidence for that? And it's almost like, in philosophy, you can't even have a conversation unless there's a given that everybody agrees on. That's the baseline of the philosophical conversation. I feel like, to some degree, there's that going on, because it's like, if you can't have an understanding that consciousness gives you everything that you need, then that you do need evidence to support something that enables you to believe, then we're not going to be able to have the same level of conversation. And it's not a higher, it's just not, we're not going to communicate. I don't know. I guess I'm still forming a perception on this, but what's your take on that?
So I've noticed that when people are more open to trusting, that the universe will then send in the proof.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, I've got a couple of really nice examples. So I have this incredible client. She had a couple of sessions back in September, and then just a couple days ago, she was ready for a follow-up. So we just had another session recently. Her very first session. So we're only talking about 3 sessions here, right?
Yeah.
As far as human time, that's not a ton of time that this has taken. And when she first came in for her first session, she was talking about like how, in a really loving way, a curious way, like, how am I going to know that this is real and that I'm not making it up? And so we had our conversation about that. And then they gave her, and it wasn't
like a conversation that most people want.
I know. Oh, I know. And it wasn't like I said, it was very loving and based on curiosity rather than deeply rooted in doubt or pessimism.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was open, but still curious about, well, how do I know?
Yeah.
And they gave her this very distinct past life memory about a hospital in Brooklyn. And so the time period was clear, the location was clear, this building was a very, like, on a street corner and had a very specific, unique set of front doors. And so she saw it really clearly, and then went home, and that was the main thing that was Googleable for that session, and she found it. Right? So,
chills.
yeah. And I think because what was going to come up in her second session was like so beautiful and so outside of the box. I mean, just deeply moving. It's one of the only sessions where, when I've been telling, I don't talk to my husband about this stuff that much, but this one moved me. Her second session moved me so much that as I was telling him about, I was like crying, like tears of joy and connection. And it was amazing what came in her second session. And I think that they were like, she has to know ahead of time that all,
it was like a bridge.
She has to know.
So what just like it was healing for her, or what?
Okay. So, and of course, there are no revealing details as far as identity. And this is something, in addition to our understanding about animals, I think that this is a story that I'm starting to feel more compelled, like, needs to be out there. Her husband passed a couple of years prior to our first session, and she was still speaking about him in present tense. Wow. Right? Yeah, he had a diagnosis years and years earlier. He was supposed to have, it was something like a year and a half or 2 years to live. He made it far longer than that. Pardon my forgetting of the details. I've got it written down, but I don't have it locked in. But then he lived for like another 15 plus years. And he always said to her, he was like, I will never leave you. I will never leave you. And so he is beating this diagnosis big time. But then the time started to come where he was starting to transition out of that physical body. And she was aware of near-death experiences and things like that. And as he passed to the other side, she was like, you've been there, come back. Please come back. Like, you've been there, please come back. And so, and I'm thinking,
that's so painful.
I know. And it's Morjani, and we know about how she was on the other side, and then she came back, and she has this deep belief, and she believes him. I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to leave you. She believes him. And then he transitioned out of
perception.
That body.
Perception is
right. Right. Well, then it gets even more magnificent, amazing, beautiful. So she's having the second session. Now, remember, they've given her proof in the first one so that she can really embrace.
She was really stuck in her grief.
Yeah. And what was interesting too, when she would talk about him in present tense, even though a couple of years had passed since his transition, it didn't feel like denial. It felt accurate.
Oh, really? Really? Okay. Yeah. So what was she? So she wasn't stuck in her grief. She was just.
She was partially stuck in the sadness. That was the word that they
attachment to his physical.
Yeah. And so they kept saying, like, move through the sadness. On the other side is the joy. And so they were really continuing to give her that message. And then here's the amazing thing. They said, he is coming back to you. Oh. And we were like, what? Yeah. And so
make sure the recorder's picking this up.
Right. And you know how I've got my concurrent lifetime and my adorable orangutan self. So there's another part of him, part of his soul, that is on earth right now as an adult male who she will be connecting
Connected
with
with.
in a like
I
soulmate
love
romantic. Yeah. And they said, they were like, you're not going to have decades together, but you are going to have a good period of time together, and you will go through your lives. I think the phrase was holding each other's hands.
Aww.
Yeah, so he's coming. And they were like, you will know him by his eyes. And I mean, there were all these very clear messages, but they said, talk about an ultimate motivator and carrot from the universe. They're like, you got to work through the sadness. You got to find your joy again.
Wow.
And you know that he loves her so much. He's probably like, come on, I want you to be happy. Let's be happy. And her happiness, her joy will open up him
To
coming.
allow that to come. Well, and spirit energy doesn't come through as easily when you're in a lower vibratory state. And so that your perceptions open, the more your frequency allows, and that's in joy and in
Right.
happiness.
Absolutely. It ushers in all of this, all of the magic.
Yeah.
So, and then what was interesting about her session just a few days ago, her husband's soul was very, very present in both of those first sessions, both within the past lives and then within the spirit realm. And so when we're exploring this third session a few days ago, he actually wasn't in very much of it, which I found to be kind of curious because he was so ever present in the other two. And it started off in this really beautiful scene where she was on one side of a gateway, and she saw these beautiful flowers everywhere, and she really loves gardening. She's a creator soul. She really loves gardening. So she's seeing all these flowers. She knows what type they are. She's smelling them. And she actually emailed me yesterday, and she was like, I didn't think that they had a fragrance, but yeah, but she decided to smell them after the session, and she was like, that is exactly how they smell.
Wow.
So the olfactory proof, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when we were asking about her husband's soul, we were like, where is he? And he was like, well, I'm here, but I'm also really busy getting this other guy ready for.
That's exactly what came through to me. I was seeing sort of like the changing behind the curtain at the theater, you know, like during a performance. It's like costume change.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was like, you're getting there. You're moving into joy and out of the sadness. You're doing a great job. I've got to get him ready because you're getting ready. And so he was like, I'm here, but I'm also busy.
Love ya. Be with you soon.
Exactly. And I think too that for her, it was that time spent, and she, so she's a teacher and she's a creator, and she got to spend more time with her spirit realm students, which was really fun. So it was very impactful to learn more about that area as well, which again reinforced her connecting with joy, which is a big piece of what he really wants her to experience. So I'm just waiting for the email. Like, I know
we got to check in. Be sure to let me know if that happens, because that sounds exciting.
Yes,
so
very.
I want to transition a little bit before we have to end, because this hour is sailing by as usual. So, you know, the work that you and I do, we also work in with consciousness in hypnotherapy with people who don't necessarily have a spiritual inclination. So just working on like the 3D day-to-day life stuff. And I'm noticing some stuff in my work. It probably isn't surprising to most. There's a lot of stress and anxiety, relationship shifting. But say a little bit about what you're getting with your clinical clients.
So just to make sure we're totally on the same page. So they've come in for something that's not quite spiritually related.
Yeah.
And okay. What's interesting I'm trying to think.
Of course, it always ends up being spiritually related, but we're all at different levels, and some people don't want to look at that yet.
I'll try to jog the memory banks, but what's interesting for my practice is I think that I'm so open about what I've been experiencing, other people have been experiencing, that the people who decide, yeah, Courtney, that's the one that I want to work with, they're already so spiritually open. Yeah, so, okay. Oh gosh. I'm glad that my husband never watches any of this stuff. So I actually use him as an example.
That's
So
cute. Hey, and
that's
it's okay if you're only getting spiritual stuff. I'm getting some of the others, so I was just
Mhm.
curious about it from like a professional standpoint. But yeah,
Well,
share
he's
what you
the
want to share.
perfect example. Did I tell the story last time about him going into the spirit realm and validating 4 of the areas of Newton's work? Did I talk about that last time? Well, if I
I
did,
don't think
I guess
so.
I'm supposed to talk about it again.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Talk about it again.
So yeah, he's such a perfect example because while he believes in all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and he thinks it's possible for other people, his personal block is not quite believing in his ability to access all of this.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, Courtney, you're magical, but I'm not magical. I'm like, oh, Charles, you're super magical. It's time
You
to
wouldn't
unlock that.
marry an unmagical guy.
I know, right? Thank you very much. Yes. So he's doing me this favor where I'm like, please let me practice. He's had no exposure to Newton's work because he's definitely not going to read the books. He's so not interested that I've not even talked to him about any of the information in the book. So he's really a very clean slate. Like he has no idea what to expect. And we go into, and he's actually accessed past lives because I've asked him to let me practice on him for other sessions. So he's not starting from zero in therapy. He had some other sessions.
What is his name? Charles?
Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, Charles. I met him. He's a nice
Yeah.
guy.
He's such a cutie pie.
He
Yeah.
is.
And brilliant. And
Oh my gosh, very, very intellectual. You can tell. Like yeah,
he's a thinker.
Analytical thinker. What does he do for a living?
He's a software engineer.
Right.
So
Okay.
he figures out how everything works.
Right.
And then, yeah. So the analytical mind has served him very well in certain areas of his life. But then in other areas, his journey has been so beautiful because when I first started practicing on him, he could not tell me what he was seeing without starting the sentence with, I might be making this up, but, and then he would tell me what he was seeing. Like every single sentence, I might be making this up, but.
I've had those clients too. It's like, yes. Okay, yeah, ... Okay, yeah. Okay.
What was funny is that, because, he's a really successful guy. He likes achievement and doing really well. And he actually was listening to a video that I was watching where the hypnotherapists were joking about clients being so doubting and thinking that they're making things up in the session. And because he heard them joking about that being a common thing, he was like, I'm not going to do that anymore.
I bet that could have been from spirit coming in right at the perfect time, like putting a horn to his ear. Okay.
I think so, because the hypnotherapists tend to not joke or poke fun about the sessions or their clients. And of course, it was very good natured and lighthearted, but he heard it in the way that he needed to hear it. And he was like, oh, is this something that they make fun of? And then if they make fun of that, then I'm not going to do it. So he heard it in the way that was motivating for him.
Well, and we do joke about we get every time, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to hypnotize me, but I don't know if I'm hypnotizable.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so anyone watching this, they can tell that it's lighthearted and good natured and that we love all of them. But yeah, it's pretty funny, some of the common things. And so he was getting to hear the exact thing that he is prone.
He's like, I'm not,
right. And so his sessions started to move and progress so beautifully once he stopped doing that statement before every single sentence. So he was able to open up more because he wasn't constantly allowing that feed to come through. So and he had seen some past lives, again, not very interested in it, but it was part of my homework assignment. So he had, he had to go into it. And so he wasn't a newbie, but he also wasn't really that into it. So we go into the spirit realm and he validates 4 areas of the spirit realm. And so what's, but then he also validated the animals are part of our soul groups and that we have lifetimes as animals. So like I said, he's validating a lot of areas, but then also validating what I'm seeing as new information that's coming in. So his session actually was one of the most profound, impactful sessions that I've experienced. Little Charles, who's all resistant. But the reason I bring all that up is that even though he's had access to the spirit realm and he knows what is out there and how it feels, he will still come back to me and ask me for sessions just for stress management, where he's like, I'm feeling kind of stressed out. Can I please have a session? I'm just like, okay. And which is actually tremendous progress, because he never would have thought of hypnosis as a resource for stress management prior to having the sessions, but he knows how much better he feels after
That's
them.
so good. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's actually kind of a good note to sort of close on. Obviously, there is so expansive, and there's never going to be closure for us. We could talk about stuff forever. So we're just going to have to periodically have you on, Courtney. But
I love it. That's a good idea.
yeah, and my wonderful viewers that I love very much, you know, if you know people who are experiencing anxiety or stress, and maybe they're not interested in the spiritual stuff like you are, that's totally cool and totally fine. But hypnotherapy is actually an incredible way for people to access their greater potential, and that means empowerment without stress and anxiety. And we live in a world right now where there's a tremendous amount of external pressure to feel anxious, to feel stress and fear, but those are not emotions that we have to perpetuate in our lifetime. And hypnosis and hypnotherapy are amazing tools for helping people move beyond that, so you can actually achieve the joy that you're meant to experience in your life.
And then when you start to find out how magical the universe is, how magical you are, then stress starts to fade away naturally, because it's like, well, I don't need to be stressed because everything is working out as it should. And we know that we can send up a wish and that this beautiful result will occur. And that's not a very stressful exchange where you're like, hey, need some help. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, 3 more and 10 more. I mean, think of beautiful children who are just like absolutely not having any doubt that they're complete manifestor magical beings. And so it's really reconnecting with that divinity within all of us that you're doing by getting rid of those limitations. And you know, that's pretty much it for me. Do you have any closing things that you'd like to say before we end it?
Like you were saying, I don't know if there is even a closing thing, because none of it closes. So
yeah,
I guess
it's just more opening.
Until next time. Yeah.
And so to the audience, Courtney and I are colleagues, and so if you have questions for her, please do put them down in the comment section. I'll be sure to note them. And if you have any comments for Courtney, write them there too. And I'll also put her contact information. Share with us your website and your YouTube channel and all the stuff you want to plug. Go for it.
All right. So it is payitforwardhypnosis.com. And my Facebook page is Pay It Forward Hypnosis LLC. But the other Facebook page that I think is so helpful, and we talked about this last time, I think, is the Spiritual Hypnosis Live Facebook page. Because there's a live session every month, and that's actually happening on May 5th, so this Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and people can watch the live session and participate. They can send in their questions as it's happening live.
That is so cool.
That.
That's wonderful. I'm going to have to check that out for sure. And you still I need to sit with you and find out how I can do that too, because that would be really fun.
Yeah.
It'd be really fun to collaborate in some way, Courtney. It'll be
fun. We already are as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, well, and it'll be fun. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today on this beautiful spring day. And thank you so much, Courtney. All the love in the world to you. Mwah. All right. Until next time, everybody. Thanks a lot. Take good care. Bye, Courtney.
Bye.